Hello everyone, I'm Aaron Vicia and you're watching Up Front, shot right here in the Alberni Valley. Today I have two guests with me, Doug Holmes, he is the CAO of the ACRD, and Tim Pley is the CAO of the City of Port Alberni. So it was January 23rd at approximately just after 3 a.m. in the morning, and I personally was awoken to sirens of the Tsunami Warning System as well as many of, or thousands of my fellow citizens in the Alberni Valley. Today the topic is about the tsunami warning and what to do, what not to do, and again I have my two guests with me, Doug and Tim. And Doug, let's start with you. This is the first time we've met. Maybe give me a short little bit of your background and what brought you to the ACRD in Port Alberni.
Sure. Well, I've been here since August, and before that I'd worked at a couple of other regional districts and a couple other municipalities, and germane to the topic that we have today, I've worked in flood recovery in Alberta for approximately 3 years. So not on the response side, which Tim is probably quite expert in, but more on the recovery side.
Excellent. So welcome to the Alberni Valley.
Good
nice
to be
have you here.
Thank you.
And Tim, well-known face in the Valley. Give us just a little tidbit on yourself.
Hi, Aaron. I'm happy to be here as well. As Doug mentioned, my background with the city has been primarily emergency response as my role in the fire department. For the past 2 years, I've been the Chief Administrative Officer at City Hall, so a much wider scope. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Welcome both of you. Thank you very much for joining us today. So let me start with my first reaction. Hear that alarm early in the morning, obviously a rude awakening, almost an eerie sound. My first reaction, besides listening to my wife screaming, saying, we gotta go, we gotta go, I went to a radio to try to tune myself into what's happening. Within, I would say, 30 seconds, David Woolricher was on the radio, given instructions and saying, here's what's happening. You have till 4:40, I believe it was, before this wave is supposed to hit. I had knowledge of and information right away by going to the radio. Did I do the right thing? What should we be doing when we first hear that alarm? Let's start with you, Tim.
No, I think for the most part you did the right Port Alberni thing, if I can say that. And over the last 25 years that I've been involved in emergency preparedness and particularly tsunami warning response, we've been telling folks that if there's a tsunami warning, we will raise the alarm through our tsunami warning system, and people should evacuate to higher ground immediately and seek more information from that safe location. And what we've been saying is you should tune into the Peak Radio, local radio station, and we'll give you up-to-date information there. So very pleased that it worked for you, and very pleased that the Peak, Dave Woodchard in particular, responded as quickly as he did and was taking information from our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and disseminating that. Yes, so that would be a Port Alberni response, somebody like yourself who's from the community, familiar with our procedures. We're hearing from a number of people who are new to the community, maybe not as familiar with that message, and looking to other sources for information.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Doug, your take on this. Are you guys called before this warning is sent off? Somebody setting the alarm? What happens?
Well, our day started a fair bit earlier than that. At about 1:52, we both got a phone call as part of Emergency Management BC's call-out system. And by the time I had listened to the message, Tim gave me a phone call and said, you got the message too? He said, absolutely. So we called another one of our co-workers who got to the Emergency Operations Center, which is in the ACRD office. And so she was there by about 2:15, and I think that's about the time Tim got there as well. And so in terms of the question as to the right response, what you will be talking about an awful lot as a community in the coming days, weeks, and months is the response actually starts quite a bit before that in terms of household emergency preparedness. And so we do, of course, and have had a number of materials go out to the community historically on that, and they're on our website, of course. And we think this is an opportune time to talk about, to reinvigorate that conversation. Yeah.
One of our big topics today is going to be about information and how to get it and where to get it and stuff like that. But let me start with a little story that I just recently heard. And Tim, you mentioned people from out of town or people new to this community who haven't heard about this and don't understand it. I know of a particular lady who is new to town and obviously very freaked out, living on Lower Johnson. Obviously she left, went to higher ground, but the next day she went to City Hall and said, oh my goodness, I'm new to here, I was totally freaked out. Can you give me some information on about what this is all about?
Right.
Unfortunately, she was told that there was nothing that she could be given at that time, and a comment was made about locals understanding what to do, and therefore we don't have anything set up for people who are new. Can you answer to that?
Well, if that person was left with that response, or left perceiving that response, and I'm sorry for that. You know, we could impart better information than that.
Yeah. Is there a package being put together maybe for someone that's new to town?
There is information available. I would say we haven't done as good a job as we would like to do recently, collectively, the ACRD and the city, in keeping that package refreshed and in front of people, and in formats that where people would look for it. Online, welcome wagon, that kind of thing. Yeah. Our attention's probably been focused away from the public education in the last couple of years, and we need to get back onto that. So,
because we're all used to what's happening, right?
Yeah, and Port Alberni, maybe what used to be a community where everybody was from here, I don't know we're that community anymore, and we need to be mindful that there are new people in this community and visitors who need that information.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the information. Where does it come from? I mean, you mentioned internet and welcome wagon. I know this individual went to a welcome wagon rep and asked, "Do you have any information?" They didn't.
Oh, okay.
So obviously those connections have to happen.
I think the connections need to be maintained as well, because my guess is there was a time when those connections were there, and a welcome wagon representative would have included in their materials things just like this, and how to prepare, informing about the vulnerabilities in this community, informing, not only, try to maybe go beyond the 72-hour preparedness personally and in your household, et cetera, making an evacuation plan, things like that. So what happens, of course, is not only do community members change, but staff members change at both the ACRD and the city. Certainly at the ACRD, we've had quite a bit of staff turnover, et cetera. And so in both of our organizations, because we do operate jointly for the Alberni Valley with respect to emergency preparedness, in both organizations, we're embarking upon, and we're already embarking upon, getting prepared for not only hiring an emergency operations coordinator, because we've been without one for some time, but also reinvigorating our staff and refamiliarizing our staff with their roles in the EOC, as well as making sure that our materials for the public were up to date, and then again reinvigorating and restarting the public education process, and that'll happen in a number of fronts.
Are you taking applications now for a coordinator? Is that in the works?
Well, if somebody wanted to send their application in, they could, but it'll be probably I would say about another week or so until we have that job description finalized and the ad out.
Can you give me a 10-second frame of what you're looking for?
Oh, sure. Well, somebody...
It's a good plug for you right now.
Absolutely, yeah. So somebody, this will be, like many positions at the ACRD, it'll be someone who wears a couple of different hats. Part of the job will be, in fact, working with the fire departments quite closely in the coordination role, and so making sure that the efforts with respect to training and standards are maintained and optimized, so that the volunteer chiefs, for example, don't have to spend a whole bunch of time trying to coordinate multiple halls in getting the best bang for the buck in training opportunities for the volunteers, et cetera. Making sure things like the automatic mutual aid, which is a huge benefit for the entire valley, making sure everything is working well in that kind of in that environment, and also making, just helping the chiefs who are working well together, helping facilitate that and keeping that going. So that's half the job. The other half of the job relates to emergency operations preparedness, and that job then is to actually identify the training opportunities, making sure the plan is robust, making sure that the training opportunities are set up in a way that we can actually get our staff to those things, because everybody's got their regular job, and this is an additional piece on top of most people's regular jobs. And so that training has to come in a way that they've actually got time to take it, absorb it, and then it has to be exercised from time to time. So that person will also identify the best way to do that, and then put that on. And then, of course, in an event like on the 23rd, that person would also be would not necessarily lead the response, because that would be either Tim or myself in our program, but they would be there as an important role, making sure that all the materials that we thought were at our fingertips are there for us, making sure that we're being reminded in the moment of the crisis that oh, don't forget about this and don't forget about that, and be supportive in any way they can.
Definitely a good dry run or dress rehearsal, I guess we can call it, that we just went through. So obviously you have learned a lot from what has happened and things to do differently next time.
Yes.
Lots of social media stuff out there. You hear different comments from different people, but one of the things is people were saying we didn't actually hear the alarms. We couldn't hear it. Is it important for everybody in the valley to hear it, or is it just important for the low-lying levels to be evacuated?
Well, I can speak to that because the city owns and operates the majority of the Tsunami Warning System. And I've been working with that obviously through the fire department for years. Maybe a long response if you can tolerate that. When we got this system in the early 1990s, I think we thought that it was going to be the system that we could reach out at any moment and tell people, hey, there's an emergency and here's exactly what you should do. And we gave that message out back in the day. And the few times that we've had to actually use it, we've realized that it just doesn't have the ability to broadcast real information in real time with clarity. And it's really an outdoor warning system. So it's a siren. It's that loud wailing siren that we all heard and we're scared by, or alarmed by. And that's its function. It alarms us and it causes us to say, hey, something's going on. I need to evacuate and I need to get more information. Not unlike your smoke alarm in your house. It goes off. You don't expect somebody to shake you gently awake and say, hey, Aaron, there's a fire in the kitchen. You need to go out the back door, right? You've got a family. Your family's got a plan for that. You know when the smoke alarm goes off. You've got 2 routes out. You take one of them. You evacuate to a safe location, and from there you gather more information and you make sure everybody's okay. So, an outdoor tsunami warning system is very similar. You need to be aware of the risk. The system goes off, you evacuate to a safer location, which is high ground, which you've identified already. Ideally, we need to do a good job of communicating to people their risk and where a safe location is for them. And then from there, gather more information. And that in itself is how we think the system should run. It's not easy to penetrate everybody's house with that alarm, that message. Can you imagine how loud that would have to be to penetrate every building and every building in the community? So yes, it certainly needs to target the homes who are in the inundation zone, and some of the complaints we're hearing about the clarity and the volume come from outside the inundation zone. About five to 7 years ago, we did a door knocking campaign in the tsunami inundation zone, and we found in the range of 94 to 96% of the people could hear the alarm test. The monthly test from where they were, and they knew they were at risk and they had an evacuation route planned. So at that time, we were very pleased with the degree to which we'd educated and to which people were prepared for that. Probably we're due now to retest that and see if that's still the case.
Yeah, I wouldn't say disappointed. I didn't hear the didgeridoo, but I knew it was for real then, not hearing that. But it was quite a different sound. So speaking of evacuating, going to higher ground, heard the alarm. We know we need to get out. People went as high as the hump. Is that the right place to go? Is there an answer for everybody to where to go?
The hump might be a bit high.
A little bit high.
Yeah, a little high.
Yeah.
So how does one know? At what area you're in town, where you get to, or I do know that there was comments about people going to the hospital and filling up the parking lot. I understand that's an absolute no-no. So where should we go?
So the general rule is above the tracks and above 4th. But what we need to do now is get to a very specific education program about that. For a couple of reasons. One is the city, of course, is divided with some low-lying areas. And if the event is happening and you're one of the last people to go, we want to make sure that those evacuation routes do not include those low-lying areas. Yeah, I suppose. Anything else, Jim, you might have to add?
We've been taking some input around people heard the alarm and evacuated and didn't know how high was high enough, and they went online looking for that information.
Especially new people to town.
Especially new people, and went on some of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and city's website, and couldn't find that specific information in that moment.
Right.
So that says 2 things to me. One, we need to be more active, and our website needs to be better. But 2, it's about the education piece. People shouldn't have to find when your smoke alarm goes off, you don't start to wonder.
You won't start doing research.
Where's the safe place? You need to know ahead of time where your safe place
Exactly.
is. So there's work we can do on raising that level of awareness and education, so people know before the fact where's a safe location for them.
Yeah. So regional district and city need to provide the information on a timely manner, but people also need to take responsibility for themselves and learn the information.
And it's our job to help them get that. And so we need to do some work before the emergencies, and then we also need to be reaching out during the emergencies.
Okay, so let's go back to evacuation again. And there's a difference between having a warning and hearing maybe through the radio like I did that there was an earthquake in Alaska, potential tsunami coming, versus maybe me waking up to feeling the shake.
Yeah.
Different situation. What do I do? Do I have the same reaction both times?
I would say yes, but a different frame of mind maybe. So in the tsunami warnings we've had since we've had the system, we've had a Japanese earthquake. We certainly just had the Alaska earthquake, and that causes us to think we may have a tsunami coming. And there's a time lag obviously in there, right? So if a person doesn't feel the earth shake and gets a tsunami warning, that's an indication that an earthquake far enough away from us to not feel it has potentially caused a tsunami. So there's a bit of time to figure out some more information, right? So, I mean, to do what you did, to go online first before you evacuate, that's a judgment call. If you feel the earth shake, that is a very good indication that there will be a tsunami imminently. So if we have a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, within 30 minutes, we expect to see a significant tsunami in the Alberni Valley. And that's the historical one that we're susceptible to.
Is that what happened last time?
No, in 1964 was an Alaska earthquake, Anchorage, Alaska.
So there's time again.
9.2, huge earthquake. Every 300 to 500 years, there's a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, which causes, we believe, in the magnitude of a 20-meter tsunami here in the valley. Super significant, right? The last one happened in 1700, 317 years ago.
Wow.
So we're coming due for that. And so that is the one, if that happens, that fault, we expect it'll be a 9 magnitude earthquake. The ground will shake for 4 to 5 minutes to the point where it'll be difficult to stand. And as soon as you pick yourself up off the ground, you should evacuate to higher ground, and because there will be a tsunami. So in short, if the ground shakes, get to high ground.
Right.
And figure out other things later. So figure out later, what a mustering point is, all those kinds of things. Just get to high ground.
Yeah, because I've heard of people grabbing meds and different things, and obviously your pets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In a shake, you need to move.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what actually the aftermath may look like, because we didn't actually get to experience that, thankfully. No. We got an all clear just an hour or two after the alarm. What would it look like the next day?
Well, Doug's had some experience on recovery.
Yeah. The aftermath of a tsunami I haven't been involved in, but I have been in the aftermath of a flood, and maybe sort of 1 meter to 2 meters, depending where you were in the town of High River. So I worked in that subsequently, and it is all encompassing as you can imagine. That's what it is, because there's a mixture of there's sewer and there's water and there's everything that you can imagine. Fuel from garden sheds and kids' toys floating around. Just everything just gets absolutely everywhere. And so I wasn't involved in the response at that time. But in the recovery, it is just a mess everywhere. And the real struggle in a situation like that is to find some dry place to be. Here we have high ground, and so in that situation, it's just a question of can you get there? And if you can get there, there'll be dry ground. If it's a situation that has happened throughout the province, we're going to be on our own for a while. There's very densely populated areas in the Lower Mainland that will involve an awful lot of people. It'll take some time to sort out. And they don't have, as in every location, Richmond, for example, wouldn't have a lot of high ground. There'd be a lot of people traveling a fair distance just to find that high ground. So that says to me that we collectively will be on our own for some time in a situation like that. With the benefit of some high ground, we'll have to work through it, bit by bit as we go. It'll be a situation of controlled chaos no matter what.
Right.
The very best prepared event in which we're evacuating in our very best way, with the very best of education in the community, will still be controlled chaos. Any imagination that it would be a nice orderly, four abreast exit from the low area is just not realistic. Yeah.
Surprisingly, it was well organized in my area, not to anybody's direction, but people were allowing other cars to go in off side streets and stuff like that.
Very orderly.
It seems to flow quite nicely.
You bet.
So if it actually hits, we're going to evacuate to higher ground, but let's say we're getting into the cold nights at night and stuff like that. There would be muster stations set up for people to get to. I saw a lot of people walking to higher ground. Where do they, where do they go? Will there be certain buildings?
We haven't identified in the past muster stations. So we've identified some general routes, and people should identify their own personal evacuation routes from their homes. And again, we just want people to get to high ground to be safe, and then from there to sort out better information, that kind of thing. On a personal level, it would be terrific to have somewhere where you're going to go. We're going to grandma's, or we're going to my sister's, or that sort of thing, and have that predetermined. Whose home will you seek refuge in? We did set up, the regional district did set up a reception center at Echo Center for people who were able to get to there.
Not everybody has relatives in town?
Exactly. A lot of people are on foot, and a lot of people evacuated uphill on foot. It was cold, it was wet, and these warnings turn around quickly, and they were able to get back home quickly. But if the event had been a tsunami, then the next step would have been setting up some facilities where people could be housed. So maybe where they can get some warm food and shelter. But we don't pull the trigger on setting those off until we don't plan to at this point, until the emergency actually happens.
Okay. Yeah. So let's kind of summarize this whole conversation as to the whole what to do, and where are we going to start gathering that information now? Because I know there was a lot of information lacking in certain sources, internet, and obviously City Hall. What's going to change, and how do we access the information going forward?
First of all, we've reached out jointly to the community via local media and social media and said, hey, we just went through this event that was challenging for all of us, and we want to learn from it. Some things we know already went very well, and we suspect some things that didn't go so well, but we really want to hear from people. So there's some opportunities to respond to that online, and we're compiling that input, and Doug and I and our teams will be working on that to see what can we do better. And then we know now already that public education is going to be a really big piece of that. We need to focus on that.
And I assume the information you're looking for is not to be criticized as to what went wrong, but suggestions as to what can be more helpful.
We'll take it however it comes, quite frankly. We hope that people take a constructive tone. If they feel they've got to talk about something that didn't go well, as long as we can get some learnings out of it, that's the important part. It's not particularly helpful just to say, I'm mad about this and you did a bad job. It's very helpful to hear something like, I'm mad about this, you did a bad job, here's how you could do it better. That's the helpful piece, and that's the piece that we're collecting now. We're getting a lot of recurring themes. Themes about more regular communication would be helpful. From our point of view, the information comes in a very disjointed way. One of the decisions we were deciding, one of the input information pieces that we were waiting for before making a decision about sounding the horns was, when will the wave hit the continent? And so people don't know that we're waiting for that information. Well, between the time that they find out somehow that there's an alarm and they're waiting to do what's next. So one of the things we're hearing is that they would like to hear a little bit of an update. And even if we have no new information, we can be reminding people about different pieces of personal preparedness as we're deciding whether or not, for example, to call an evacuation. So that's the type of things we're hearing about and that we want to get to work on and do better on.
Okay, great. Teamwork. Everybody heading for the same goal.
Correct.
That's right.
Excellent. Okay, I want to thank you both very much for coming on, and maybe we can do a recap on this sometime
That would be great.
When everything is organized and we know exactly what our plan is.
Okay.
So again, thank you both for all the information, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Aaron.
Appreciate it. You've been watching Up Front. I'm Aaron Vicia for Shaw TV. Thanks for watching.